Italy. Left Italy when I was 31, moved to London, UK, lived there for work there, and then I moved to Singapore. Lived in Singapore and Tokyo. Then I moved to Australia, and then I came to US 23 years ago, living in Oregon. And then 3 years later, I moved to this little paradise. So I've been living here, now calling myself a local because my accent doesn't qualify. But I feel gifted to be here in Whitefish. The question also was, why are you running? When I candidated myself 4 years ago, and there were 9 opponents for 1 seat, and I have to say thank you, Ryan, because you would have been re-elected, no-brainer. I promised to my supporters and also my opponents that I would run twice. And the reason was I thought I was not going to get elected, so I was going to run 2 years later. But now someone called me on that promise, and they said, yeah, you said you're going to run twice. I said, I've done 4 years already. You're going to run twice. And that's why I'm going to keep the promise to give back to this beautiful community.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ben Davis. I am a current city council member running for re-election. Am I on? Yeah. Okay. Louder. They're all saying louder.
Hang on.
Hold down, animals. Any closer and I'll eat it. There we go. My name is Ben Davis. I'm a current city council member running for re-election this year. I want to thank everybody for coming out and your interest in our local government and those who are running for it. I think the easiest way to introduce myself is that I have essentially 3 jobs. My first job is as a husband with my wonderful wife, Brooks, and our son, Teddy, who's 5 and just started kindergarten last week. Very exciting. My second job is I'm the owner of Seven Hills Construction. I manage construction projects. That's my day job. And my third job, and the reason why we're here tonight, is my volunteer work with the city. An abbreviated resume of what I've done with the city started about 10 years ago. I moved here about 13 years ago. Starting about 10 years ago, there was a board seat available on a small nonprofit called the Whitefish Housing Authority that builds affordable housing. Believe it or not, back then nobody actually cared about affordable housing, but that quickly changed. Soon after that, I was also on what's called the Board of Adjustments, which is now rolled into what we call the Planning Board or the Community Development Board. And then 6 years ago, one of the council members at the time was unable to complete her term, and I was appointed to take her seat for the remaining 2 years. After those 2 years, I ran for election 4 years ago. I secured my seat, and so this would be now my second full term for a city council member. So anyway, that's the short version of my history, and I am looking forward to an informative conversation this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, I guess that leaves me. I'll start it off with this one, so get your drinks ready. Quasi-judicial. Go ahead and take a drink. It's a deep cut if you've been coming to these things for a while. All right, I'm Nathan Dugan. I'm running for city council here in Whitefish because we need to move forward in Whitefish. We've got a city council that, in my view, has become a lot better at generating excuses for why it's impossible for us to do things or why we can't do things than it is at generating solutions to some of our biggest problems. I don't think the same old is going to fix these problems. It's not going to produce better results. The pandemic is over at this point, continuing to see home prices go up. We're seeing some businesses start to close downtown that have been around for a long time, some of them. And we're seeing continually our community members need to move away, including somebody out of my own house today moving to Kalispell because there's just more opportunity for younger people there than there is here. So the status quo has been failing for a while. My partner Mallory, her mom was on city council 22 years ago now when she got elected, and they were talking about a lot of these same issues. that status quo is beginning to catch up with us, and it's failing so much of our community. It's failing our seniors, our older adults. It's failing younger generations who can't establish themselves here. It's failing our workers, and it's failing our immigrant community as well. And I think a good example of that and of the some of the necessary changes that we need to see on the city council is kind of what happened earlier this year with our police department and with Customs and Border Patrol. And I think that could have been addressed a little bit better by the city council. There was a lot of public comment on that issue, and I think that the heart of the issue really was that the right questions were not asked in those meetings. And so it was asked whether there were policies in place and all of this sort of stuff, but the council should have gone a step farther, in my view. Should have asked what those policies were, and had that further conversation. Put those policies out there publicly instead of just saying the policies exist and the public can go request them and get them on their own. They didn't have that larger conversation. It's impossible to get to a solution and to fix the issue and make it better if you're not asking those questions to figure out what the root cause of the issue actually is. The complaint that was filed in court alleges that some of those policies were broken, but again, not putting that out there made that a little bit harder, and I think, might have put the city in a worse place in the lawsuit that they're in right now. Anyway, ask for your vote in November, and thanks for being here, everybody. Looking forward to a good conversation with these guys.
All right. So I'll let you guys know who I'm addressing the question to when I ask it. Nathan, we're going to start with you. This one refers to the last city council meeting and the liquor license that was awarded to Kemosabe, the Western retail store downtown. My question for you would be, how does a retail chain that sells merchandise and liquor, how is that consistent with the established character of the community of Whitefish?
Interesting question. Yeah, thanks for the question, Ryan. I think the way that I look at that, obviously I didn't have a vote on that up here. These guys might have a little bit more insight into this. I think that business currently exists, and I didn't really track that when it came through, and so that decision, I guess, would have been made at that point in time. Do I think it's, my personal opinion, do I think it's kind of like a ridiculous story? Yeah. In terms of the question of like liquor license, beer license, I think there was a winery in there before, so I don't know if that kind of came with the business. I don't know that there was necessarily like a legal justification for denying that, but I think like a bigger problem would be denying it because you don't like what the business is after the business already exists, and trying to regulate the business out of existence on the back end. I think that like, I can understand that argument, but I don't think it's the role of government necessarily to choose like winners and losers in business particularly, and I think that like that happens a decent amount. If people want to drink in there, I definitely don't. If people want to drink in there, I prefer to come to the tap house. Let them go there. There's fewer people here. I can get more beer here at the tap house for myself. So more power to them.
All right, Ben, how about you? I believe you voted for it, right?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never been to a Kemosabe. My wife explained it to me, and I believe the explanation involves something along the lines of Real Housewives TV show. Look, I agree with some of what Nathan said here. I mean, it's, these types of development permits come before the city, and there are very specific questions that we have to answer. If a business is not granted their permit, there has to be very clear reasons why that are defensible in court. And I think as a general matter, it's not the city's job to regulate exactly what businesses are here. It's our job to regulate the impacts of those businesses on people around them. And so, retail store selling really expensive cowboy hats with a cup of whiskey in your hand sounds ridiculous. But it's a free country, so we'll see what happens there.
Thank you, Ben. Giuseppe, what are your thoughts on this?
Is it the same question?
Yep, same question.
Yes, I voted in favor. I was pretty quiet during that hearing. I tried to go by the book. And the book says there are rules of engagements. The first gatekeepers are the city staff, Department of Planning and Building. So they lay down what the deal is going to be like. There is a second level of escalation, which is a public hearing that goes to the Community Development Board, which used to be called Planning Board. And they recommend one way or another. And then there is a third level that is City Council. Now, on a side note, out of all the zoning uses, okay, we have zones. In a zone, there are things you can do by right. So if you buy a lot and you can build one single family home, you don't have to go through this saga of public hearing. But if you want to do something that is conditional use permitted, you have to go through it. Now in Whitefish, what happens, 80% of the uses are conditional use permitted. Only 20% are used by right, which this is a bigger discussion. If you ask the question later, we can address. As far as I'm concerned, the staff had approved it. The Community Development Board, I think they approved it.
They didn't.
They did not approve it. That's another case where I sadly had to go against that vote. But again, I look at use of land, impact on the rest of the community. The liquor license is not our business. That was a conditional use permit, so I voted in favor.
So I have a quick follow-up for you, Giuseppe. I was sitting right over here at this table on last Tuesday after it passed and we got word, and I was in favor of it. I really don't care if they have a liquor license or not. I think we should have more liquor license in Flathead County. But I'm definitely in the minority among my friend group. And one of my friends said this, and I want to read you what he said, and I want to know what you would say to him. He said, can Sportsman Ski House sell cocktails if they buy a liquor license? What are we even doing here? So what would you say to him?
Sure.
Well, I enjoy beer after I skiing up the mountain. So honestly, again, if he goes through the process, and you cannot make everything equal, but at that level, I say they could have a good shot, given the zoning title that is out there. I'm not sure about what the zoning title is there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll keep the tap house the only one selling beer.
By the way, a good shot is pun intended.
Yeah. Okay, next question, Ben. We'll go to you. So recently, I was reading. There's a Montana-based research company called Headwater Economics, and they recently released a report documenting how popular tourist destinations, like Whitefish, see an influx of people with financial means that move in. They tend to drive up housing prices and reduce the available supply. In turn, infrastructure takes a hit. The local government finds itself unable to pay for needed repairs. They refer to this as the amenity trap. It's defined as the paradox of a place with natural attractions that make it a great place to live, but also threaten it with being loved to death. Is Whitefish in danger of being loved to death?
At times it certainly felt that way. I know during COVID it sure did for me. Look, the intersection of our community and our visitation economy and how those two things interact and balance each other is something that is a very big issue at the council level on all types of matters. And I think it's very true that yes, we have a very strong visitation economy. There is pros and cons to that. It is a part of what this town is, but it is not the core of what this town is, in my opinion. But yeah, I think it's hard to, without going to specifics on a specific issue, to get too far in depth. But look, we have to find balance between the visitation economy, the people that come here, and the people that live here. And that affects everything we do. It's something that I'm very cognizant of, and I think it's something that we will always be discussing at the city council level.
Okay, quick follow-up then. You said you don't think it's the core of Whitefish. What would you say the core of Whitefish is?
The core of Whitefish is the community of people that live here. It's the people that are here today, probably, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. So Nathan, you kind of touched on this a little bit in your introduction. So I wanted to ask you this question. What role, if any, should a city or a local municipality play in the federal government's enforcement of federal immigration law?
I mean, at the bare minimum, no role.
Yes.
I think better is active resistance, especially with the current administration that we have and the attacks, I guess, that they're making on rights all across the country. So I think that active resistance is probably the best way to go about it, given the dynamics of the current situation. But I think that the city ultimately has no role in that. There's CBP, ICE, they're their own law enforcement agencies. If they want to do enforcement actions, they should do that on their own, and the city should not play any role in that. That's above city police officers' pay grade, in my opinion.
Okay. Ben or Giuseppe, would you either of you care to comment on, just generally speaking, what you think a city's role is in assisting the federal government in enforcing federal law?
I don't think there's a role there either. I mean, listen, the city police has a job to do, and that's community policing. The federal government, whether it's ICE or somebody else, they have a job to do, and that's immigration enforcement. Those are not the same jobs. I mean, there might be some intersection points in some way, but as a general matter, our police are here to provide community policing, to keep us safe, and to do the things that we expect them to do. Immigration enforcement is not a part of that.
Giuseppe?
I'm the one who learned the laws of the country the latest. Because I became American 7 years ago. And one thing I learned was that the system here works like an onion peel. So you have the city, you might have the school district, the city, then you have the county, then you have the state, and then you have the federation. Now, the laws that come from the higher peel down need to be upheld, can be restricted. I'll give you an example. If the state says on Spokane Avenue the speed limit is 45, the city could say, we rather do it 35, but the city cannot say we do 60.
Right.
Okay? So if you keep in mind this hierarchy, it's very simple. The city needs to work within the onion level of the city and does not enforce a federal or state unless they're clearly stated, like a speed limit.
Yeah.
When the jurisdiction gets over their heads, there are other agencies to provide that service.
Okay. Thank you. So Ben, I'll ask you the next question here. Given that you're, you work, I don't want to say the developer word, but you work in construction. Work in construction. In the big sky state full of wide open spaces, how does a town like Whitefish build affordable housing while maintaining and preserving that wide open space?
I think the city's role with respect to housing has two parts. The first part is we have to define the rules and the regulations of the road, so to speak, that allows the private sector to build the majority of the housing in our town. And it's very important, I think, when the city looks at housing policy, whether that's through growth planning, zoning, etc., that we're establishing the right guidelines that promote the things we want to promote as a community, and that we build a community in a way that we see makes sense. We define the rules of the road, we make the box, and then we expect the private sector to come in and build within that box. The second part of what the city does is the city does provide support to other nonprofits who are attempting to fill in the gap of affordable housing that the private sector can't do. It just seems like over the years that gap has become larger and larger, but hopefully that's moving now in the other direction. But as far as open space goes, I think everybody does value open space. Obviously, as the town grows, the town grows. But I do think that development needs to be thoughtful. It needs to be compatible with our community. And I think the city council needs to be very thoughtful when it drafts regulations to promote this.
Okay. So I will ask Giuseppe kind of a follow-up on the question that I asked Ben, mostly because Andy Fury is not here tonight to defend himself.
Andy doesn't need defending.
There was something that Andy said that I remember when we were on council together. He said, we're not going to single-family home develop our way out of this affordable housing problem. Would you agree or disagree with that statement by Mr. Fury?
I'll have to talk to him. I don't understand what you just said, but I can tell you what I think. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. I grew up in a town called Milano, where I owned.
They make the cookies.
I don't know if they make cookies. They make vermouth and martini.
Okay.
Actually, that's what they make.
Gotcha.
There is the martini family out of it. But I lived in a condo, you would call it, on the 7th floor of a 13 stories building, and in each story there were 5 units. None of us had parking, meaning we did not have a reserved parking spot. Okay, so you can calculate how many families, how many people, no parking.
Right.
Land costs money. A dear friend of mine once on a hike told me, you know what, I would say, Whitefish, you need to grow up. And there is no magic equation. Density is density. So if you take the land and the cost of the land and you divide it by one house, that's the cost you're gonna get. You can split that cost of that land onto 4 units. All of a sudden, the affordability becomes closer to reality. Okay? I was fighting to change the ratio between parking slots and dwellings. And that parking ratio was changed so that, and the snow lord actually had a couple of more dwellings, but now it's changed again. So my point is, first of all, we're not kids. We do not want the magic, whip the magic wand and change things. We have to work within the system. And within the system, things that can be done is to lower the barrier to entry to developers. Oops, I used the word developer. Because if a developer knows the rules of engagement ahead of time, they can plan. Sometimes we string these developers along the way up to 2, 3, 4 years. When I moved here, there were 2 trailers parked in this town. Those were affordable housing. They have been outzoned of this town because we wanted to keep the character of this town, whichever that was. So that's my thought. I see you distracted. Can I ask you, where is the camera?
There is no camera.
Oh, okay. So it's an audio podcast?
No, we decided we did not want to tarnish it with the politics of Whitefish. Our podcast is above
Appreciate-
that.
All my friends and cousins in Italy cannot see us. Wow.
So Nathan, I wanted to.
It's
Nathan,
not
I wanted
live.
to give you a minute to kind of
Film.
enter into this conversation as you're not an incumbent. I think, just have you picked up on it, I think what Andy was getting at when he made that comment about single-family homes is density is going to have to be a part of the solution when we're talking about affordable housing in Whitefish. So I think everyone knows about your background with affordable housing, and you work with the governor. So hopefully this is just a bell-tie fastball for you. But what do you think the city could be doing better?
Having started a men's baseball league this summer, I don't know if I could hit it, even if it was a bell-high fastball. But I definitely agree with the sentiment. I think I'd like to add a little more context there. We probably could solve it with single-family homes. There just wouldn't be any open space in the entire Flathead Valley. And so I guess that's like really what we're weighing. Do we value the open space, or do we value everybody having what ultimately would be, I guess, a very small strip of grass between your neighbor's house that you don't share a wall with, and a very small strip of grass in the front yard? So I think a good example of this and kind of like what is possible and what we need to see more of, back in 2023, we helped write a bill called SB 245. It legalized mixed use and multifamily housing in commercial zones in certain cities throughout the state, Whitefish being one of those. We saw a project come through a year or 2 ago at the corner of Highway 93 and 40. That is technically an SB 245 project, but it needed to be annexed into the city. And so that developer had to go through the whole development process to show the city what he was gonna build, because God forbid he builds something we don't know what he's gonna build. That was sarcasm if nobody picked up on that. So, anyway, There's another project that popped up out of the ground, out of nowhere, over on Baker Avenue, kind of like behind Ace Hardware, that Mick Ruiz is developing, called the Peregrine Subdivision, I think. That is also an SB 245 project, and I knew that because I go to a lot of city council meetings and I pay attention, and I was like, I don't ever remember that coming through. So that zoning change went through in 2019 or something like that to change to commercial zoning, and the person that did that didn't end up building what they were going to build, so it's commercially zoned. So they have been able to put in, and the sky hasn't fallen yet, although I'm sure there would have been predictions if it would have had to go through a public hearing. 40 units of housing, I think, 10% of that is affordable,
Okay.
and there's some things on the bottom. And so that process, I think, I talked to them, they broke ground like earlier this spring, and like people are going to be in those by the end of the year. That's what we need to see more of.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Ben, coming back to you, we'll kind of stick on this affordable housing vein here for real quick. So you were appointed, you served a 2-year term after you were appointed, and then you won a 4-year term in elections. So this will be years 7 through 10, right?
Correct. Yep.
So safe to say you've got some pretty good experience on the city council. What specifically should the city of Whitefish do to increase its housing supply?
I think the city needs to do what it's already doing, which is we need to update our growth planning. I mean, listen, we have a master, let me back up. In the high level, we have a master planning document called the growth policy, also called a master plan that defines how the city grows over time. And right now, it is ancient. It is written in 2007. And, you know, I think what the city really needs to make sure that we're doing is we are staying on top of the changes that are happening in our town and updating our growth planning to allow for better and more housing development of the type that's compatible with our town to help increase our housing stock here. I think in the long run, that's, in my opinion, what's going to make a really big difference. The other thing I will say is, back to my point at the intro when I introduced myself, nobody cared about affordable housing 10 years ago. That's a true statement. Back in 2006 and 2007, we had serious affordable housing problems in this town. Then the recession happened, then nobody cared for 10 years, and then everybody cared again. What I think is very important for me at the city council level is, with respect to what we're doing with affordable housing, is the concept of permanence. That we are doing things that are going to have a lasting, long-term impact, and that will continue to snowball over time. We're setting up the right nonprofits to be able to accomplish things in our town. We're setting up a permanent funding source, which we already did through the resort tax.
Okay.
And I think that those are all important steps that the city council has and should continue to take over time.
Okay, thank you, Ben. So I'm going to ask all three of you this question, and I'm going to start with Giuseppe, then I'm going to go to Ben, and then I'm going to go to Nathan. So Giuseppe, now that you've been on, you've been in Whitefish for a while, you've been on council for 4 years, where do you see people struggling in our community?
That's a very good question. Thank you. First of all, in this community, we have a number of strata. We have different realities. Okay? There is the workforce reality. There is the middle class, for lack of better terms, reality. And there is the ones who don't have to work reality. Now, when I was looking at affordable housing, I pulled data, and I learned that 33 to 36% of the properties in Whitefish are owned by people who are not residents. Okay, that's a big reality. It's 1/3 of the real estate that you see around here, and some of it is the most valuable, most probably. That's an assumption. So there is a struggle in this strata differentiation. We pretend it's not there, but that's a reality. So that's number one. Number two, traffic, concerns for security with fire, and affordability. I mean, if you look at the rental market, I heard from my friends that this going up and up and up is not happening anymore. This up and up and up, and all you need to do is look around at how much supply is in the on the marketplace. Okay? So, and probably the most common struggle is to understand that change is forever and growth is part of this change. Look at us. The three of us came here. We are not multi-generational Whitefish. Look around this room. Maybe there are 7 people who are native from Whitefish. So we need to accept that. When I came here, people were discriminating, it's easy with my color and accent, and said, well, you came here. And I wanted to say, okay, enough, no more coming here, right? What right do I have? What right does Ben have? Growth is gonna happen, and that could be a struggle, but we need to surf that wave rather than trying to push it away.
Okay, thank you.
Remind me of the question again, Ryan.
Ben, where do you see people struggling in our community?
I'd say the first things that come to mind are 2 things. Number one is, of course, housing. You know, I'm the youngest person on the city council by probably over 10 years. And I'm young enough still that I have a lot of my close friends who have had to leave Whitefish because they cannot afford to live here anymore. And that's awful. I mean, that really has impacted me. I know it's impacted a lot of other people. I think if you talk about need, I think the affordability of housing has got to be at the top of the list. And the second thing I would say is good paying jobs. You know, I mean, we have a tourist economy. A lot of the jobs here are service jobs. And, you know, it can be very hard to make things work in the long term in life based on just service jobs. And so, you know, I do think when you talk about need, those are the first 2 things that definitely come to mind.
Thank you, Ben. How about you, Nathan? Where do you see people struggling in Whitefish?
Yeah, if you're down with younger people on city council, I'm younger than Ben, by the way, by a few years, so I wrote that down so I didn't forget. But I think like a lot of people are struggling just generally in town, unless you happen to be like fairly wealthy or maybe not wealthy, but your mortgage payment doesn't exist anymore or is low enough that you can easily afford it with your job. I don't know how many people fall into that category, but where I see kind of the most struggling is actually on the opposite ends of the spectrum, I guess, in terms of age. So until recently, I was a full-time home health physical therapist and traveling all over Flathead County, but seeing patients here in Whitefish as well. And so I think older adults are one area, one group of people who are struggling, because many of them would like to downsize. Many of them live in homes that are dangerous, where they're falling down stairs or they're tripping over, rugs and all other things. But there's nowhere for them to go. They can't downsize anywhere. They don't need to be in a 3-bedroom house anymore, but they don't really have an option to get out of that, whether that's into assisted living or into an apartment or something like that. They don't want to leave the community that they know where all their friends are, and they shouldn't have to. And so that is a group that is definitely struggling. The other end of that spectrum, where I see people struggling, is people, I don't know, I guess I feel like I'm getting old now, but like maybe in my age group, but definitely younger than me. I'm in my mid-30s. I know plenty of people my age who can't get established here. Like Mal and I were super lucky. Mal grew up here, been here forever, but and her family's been here forever, but we were very fortunate with timing to be able to be here, or we wouldn't be here either. So I think that the problem with that is, like, eventually there are going to be no young people in this community to be able to continue to have the community that Whitefish is accustomed to be able to open businesses when people retire, to be able to contribute as volunteers to city boards. That is going to be a problem in the future if we don't have a community that is continually building a pipeline, I guess, for lack of a better term, of community members to fill those roles as they grow up.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. So Giuseppe, I'm gonna ask you this question, because you had talked about how 80% of properties in Whitefish are CUPs, conditional use permits. There's not a whole lot of use by right. So maybe this is what you were getting at, but my question to you would be, if you could make one change to the Whitefish City zoning code, what would it be and why?
I'm excited. You're asking amazing questions, and we did not agree ahead of time. So thank you. When I campaigned the first time around, I was adamant about the growth policy. When I ran, I kept saying this growth policy is dated 2007. And people told me, well, we just added the fire chapter, the fire plan chapter. We just added the South 93 South Corridor, so we can change the date and can make it more current. And I said, well, whatever. Thank God, between the pressure from every level, we're working at this growth policy. Again, if if someone wants to invest in a place, can tell what that is going to look for the next 10 years versus what's going to look in the next 6 months, their comfort level versus towards the risk of investment is going to be very different. So simplifying and clarifying where the use of land is going, because that's what we're talking. We're talking about use of land. I'm not talking about how big the windows are in a house.
Yeah.
And we're talking about what the use of that land and what's the plan for the next 50 years. Once the rules of engagements are in place, we could literally start doing this juridical stuff.
Yeah.
Because the laws are in place, and we don't have to be called to decide if Kimosabe can have an alcohol license or not, because it's already written there. So that's what I would like to see.
Thank you. How about you, Ben?
At risk of getting too technical, I'm going to introduce the concept of a form-based zoning code, which is a zoning code that it doesn't tell you, for example, you can't build a fourplex here, or you can't build a duplex here. It says that what happens in this particular area needs to look and feel a certain way, regardless of how many units or whatever. And it's essentially a way to have community compatibility with the concept of density. And I know that's a very abstract concept, but it's one that's come up lately in our conversations around in our growth planning. And I do actually expect it very well may be a recommendation that comes out of our growth planning, is to consider the implementation of a essentially different type of zoning policy in town that is less rigid, allows for more creative projects that suit and are compatible with our community.
Okay. Nathan, I'll give you 1 minute. I'll give you the last word on what you would change if you could change one thing about the Whitefish zoning.
Sure, yeah, I think a form-based zoning code would be a great thing to do. I think that the sheer number of conditional uses that are required in the zoning code is like absolutely ridiculous and doesn't do anything good for us, generally speaking. We can't control everything as much as we want to try, and that has actually been really detrimental in terms of like housing costs and I guess just like the makeup of the community and the cohesiveness of the community over the years. I'm gonna ask a question. Who loves all the new buildings that are being built? Just thinks they look beautiful. That is zoning. We send all these things for architectural review, and this committee goes, we'd really love to see you put like metal here and stone here. People don't have the choice to do that, to put what they want on the side of their building. And so it really like tears the uniqueness away from the town. And I think that that's like something that people resonate with. Everybody's like, these all look the same, these are all terrible. That's rules that we have, that we enforce. So getting rid of that stuff as well. It's technically illegal. The state made it illegal a couple years ago. Whitefish is still doing it for some reason, but I guess it's just a bet that nobody's gonna sue the city. But yeah, increasing the number of things we can build by right through a form-based zoning code, I think would be good. So your zoning is basically like, this is what we think things should look like here, not like you can only build a single family house. If there's 4 units in there, but it looks like a general shape and size of something in this neighborhood, go for it.
Okay. Thank you, Nathan. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Giuseppe, and I'll ask all three of you this same question. So Giuseppe, if you received a $1 million grant to use for the city of Whitefish in any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
What's $1 million?
I was gonna say, it won't go very
Yeah,
far.
a really nice studio. Yeah.
But-
Urban Omni and then maybe let it be
No, I'll probably look at infrastructure. I mean, I put a drop in the bucket of infrastructure. I'm personally concerned about the growth of our infrastructure, because you can build all you want, but if the sewage doesn't carry it, or if Baker Avenue doesn't carry the traffic, I'm honestly concerned about the next powder day next winter, when I have no idea what it would look like with the cars going up the mountain that used to be lined up all the way back to Army Navy. So I would look at infrastructure.
Okay. Thank you. Ben, how about you?
That's an interesting theoretical. I mean, I would say that to me, as long as I've been up here 6 years, every year I said, what's our biggest problem? And I say housing. And so it's very hard for me to say we're not going to put that extra type of extra funds towards something like housing. How would we do it? I'd have to think about it. It probably needs to be $1 billion, not $1 million, but every bit helps. And I think, back to my earlier point about, setting up the organizations, the people, and the systems to develop housing over time, I think is important, and I'd put it somewhere in there.
Thank you, Ben. How about you, Nathan?
Yeah, I'm glad we have one of our commissioners in the room here because my answer is going to be public transportation. And I think that $1 million might actually go a decent way in Whitefish for that. The snow bus is not perfect, far from perfect, but I haven't driven to the mountain in a couple of years, and it's the only form of public transportation that we have. But $1 million would go a long way in expanding that network within Whitefish, doing routes in all directions so that the majority of people in Whitefish, it's pretty small, would be able to use that service and at a frequency such that it's convenient, and it's more convenient than driving, because it is not the most convenient thing. Sometimes you got to plan your ski day in the middle of the day, like you miss the bus, you might be at the beer stoop for 2 hours. There are worse things in the world, but costs a little bit of money. But anyway, I think that could be a model for the rest of the county and other cities in terms of like, we build a good network here, and people get used to that, and people might start putting some pressure in some other areas around the county to expand that network a little bit. And I think that we need to get beyond this view. Maybe in Whitefish it's just for tourists or for the people working at the mountain. In the county, I think the view is maybe a little bit more that it's a senior service with a mountain climber, but like public transportation can be so much more. And like, honestly, I would go drink in Kalispell or Columbia Falls if I could just ride a bus back home, but I don't, so.
Thank you, Nathan. So before we move on to the Q&A session with the audience, I have one final question here. Giuseppe, I'll start with you. Now, and don't try to suck up to Ed here and say the tap house. Yeah, because he can't vote given his status as a felon. So where are your favorite places to spend your free time in Whitefish?
I don't live in city limits, asshole.
Up on the mountain, yeah. Not in an establishment, but just hiking up the mountain, or kayaking on the lake, or yes, those are the favorite places. Yeah.
How about
or
you,
at
Ben?
home, at home.
Okay. How about you, Ben? Where do you spend your free time in Whitefish?
All over the place. Yeah, you'll find me at pretty much any bar and restaurant in town at some various evenings, including this one, Ed. I think in the summertime, I love to play golf. I love to play pickleball. We love to go hiking and camping in the wintertime. We love to ski. I love the town. I love being all over the town, and you'll definitely see me out and about. Please come say hi.
How about you, Nathan? Where do you like to spend your free time in Whitefish?
Yeah, I mean, I spend a decent amount of time here. If I'm going to go out to a bar, it's going to be the Tap House or Bonsai probably, or the Pin and Q, which is technically our neighborhood bar, even though you have to cross like a 5-lane highway like 3 times to get over there, and it's kind of sketchy. But here, the mountain, and spent a lot of time this past summer, I guess, at the Memorial Stadium where the Twins play downtown with the baseball league, and then on the river. We have a nice little private, muddy, no infrastructure city lot that goes down to the river at the end of our alley, and so we can put in and float home, or if it's hot, we can just go sit in the river down there, and there's usually never anybody down there, so don't ask me where it is.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys very much.
Ryan, just I realized it's my backyard and I didn't mention it. The trail system. I can literally walk to Lion Mountain trail system, and that's just every day.
Okay. So I think we're going to do some questions from the audience.
Yeah, here.
Anybody got a question? I know, Ron, you got one. I like your question. I want you to come up first. Here, just come up here and stand, and we'll hand the mic to you guys.
So,
Please state your address,
Oh,
name and last
sorry.
name. I'm kidding.
Ron Garza, I'm a Kalispell representative. I'm a Whitefish emigre. In the opinion of many, there is a relative lack of coordination at the county level, looking at the various municipalities within the county. There have been attempts that seem to have gone nowhere to coordinate between the municipalities in order to address some of the common issues, and what are beginning to be more geographically common issues as these municipalities expand. How do you feel as council members or candidates as to the roles specifically for Whitefish in addressing a unified approach to what are quickly becoming common problems everywhere in the county?
I know there's a lot of history in the relationship between the city of Whitefish and the county. Not all of it great, but that was before my time, quite frankly. And I think you're absolutely correct that, you know, as this valley grows, the entire valley, it's not just Whitefish that's growing, it's the entire valley that's growing. Kalispell, Columbia Falls, and a lot of the issues that are here, I mean, Nathan brought up mass transit, that's one of them, there's others, are regional issues. So I think from my perspective, cooperating with our neighbors is an important part of our job. I think if there are opportunities to do that, I'm open to it, absolutely. And there are some problems that, you know, your local city council can't solve by itself. So we need to work together with our neighbors.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. And the timing probably is accurate. I can say that, first of all, here, we are individuals, we're not city council, we're candidates. We perform as a city council only when we have a quorum and there is a public hearing, unless it's legal and personnel, okay? So we are not the ones deciding, or we need to put it on the agenda, deciding what to do with the county. But there are entities. The mayor is a typical example. Our mayor and the mayor of Kalispell have been in touch, and they can percolate to the council ideas and concepts. I, in a different job, am on the commission at the Flathead Municipal Airport Authority, which is the airport. And my bosses are the commissioners. And when I was chair, we had periodic meetings to update each other. So there are channels, and the staff, you know, our city manager would go to meetings with other city managers, with the county planners and so on. So there are channels in place to perform that coordination. When you say many people, if you give me the list of name and last name, I can talk to them and give them my thoughts. But otherwise, that's what I know.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think that first off, we all need to carry our weight. A lot of these problems are regional, I think, as Giuseppe said. But, you know, for instance, when 76% of our workers in Whitefish drive in from other places in the valley, we are causing pressure on Kalispell and the county and Columbia Falls by not building enough housing for our workforce and for the rest of our residents. And so I think first off, we all need to carry our own weight. And then I think it all just boils down to like probably a general lack of communication. Like all of these issues, all issues in life just stem from like not communicating very well. And I know that very well, trust me. Ask Mal. But I think like there are some different ideologies in the city councils and with the county. And I think that there are things that everybody wants to tackle, and I think figuring out what those things are. This person might have 100 bad ideas, but there's probably like 2 ideas that you agree on, maybe 5 ideas that you agree on, and figuring out what those are and working towards those makes things better.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Was this yours, John? Did you have a question? Okay, I don't know who dropped this off, but I'll read it. Okay. It says with Ruiz, I assume that's Mick, volunteering 10% at some 30% of income. Why can't banks, title companies, and real estate agencies pay in or donate?
You're asking the wrong people.
I'm not really sure what that means.
I think anybody that can donate should donate, but it's not the city's job to make them do it.
Okay. I mean, I also think there's a piece of that question that is, we need to build products that are going to be more affordable. Like every duplex that goes up is like 3,000 square feet on either side, right? That's a vacation home for somebody to come bring like their whole family into, that's fine, whatever. But like we need to get some duplexes that are like 1,000 square feet, or fourplexes that are 1,000 square feet. Some ownership opportunities around there as well, instead of everything being so big.
Okay, we got another question here.
I noticed Andy's not here tonight, and my question kind of was pertaining to his attendance. In 2023, he missed 28. I want y'all to remember this when it comes time to vote, because we see his signs, everybody, and everybody recognizes his name. In 2023, he was absent 28% of the meetings. 2024, he missed 19%. In 2025 to date, he's missed 20% of the meetings. Based on this attendance, and now that y'all make a salary, do you think that's acceptable? Second question, Nathan and Ben mentioned age on council, and how many, can I see a show of hands of who would agree to term limits, reasonable term limits for council? Okay, so 2 out of 3 would say term limits would be acceptable. That's one way of getting new blood on council, is to have term limits, but it has to come from y'all because the charter has to change in order to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think the question was involving Mr. Feary's attendance at meetings and upwards of 20% absent rate. So, is that acceptable to you, Giuseppe?
I can only speak by my example. Last
19%.
year, I attended every single meeting. I missed one work session and another one because the sound system wasn't working very well. This year, I missed one meeting. When I decided to serve, I knew it was a duty. It was not a power trip. And as a duty, I feel the responsibility of being attending. But attending is just part of the equation. There is a lot of, and Ben knows that, and Nathan I guess too, because he follows what's happening. There is a lot of preparation, and you, Ryan, know that too. A lot of preparation needed to be intelligent and making any sense when we decide about the future of people who come with their cases to us. When I started, the packets were of the order of 1,300 pages. And we all receive the packet on a Wednesday, and the meeting is Monday. We all, the public can pick it up too. Now we're down to an average of 450 pages. Now, I got ahead of the curve by attending every single community development board meeting, because a bunch of what they do sooner or later comes to us. So the time involved is more than what you see, the 3-4 hours of the 1 and 2 Mondays evenings at the city council. For that reason, I also believe that term limits, and my concept was 2 terms consecutively, then you have to drop out, and then you can run again. So I'm not saying forever 2 terms. I'm saying, you gotta run as a non-incumbent sooner or later. That was my concept.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, attending meetings is obviously important, but I would also say that a lot of the work that the city council does is not in the meetings. I mean, we spend a significant amount of time, whether it's reading materials, attending other meetings or other boards, or on the phone talking to constituents or other council members trying to get things done. And look, I'll stick up for Andy for a second. I mean, he's been there for a long time, and I think the community gets a lot of value out of some of our council members that have been there for a while. I mean, I don't think being there for a while means you can't do the job as well. I just think that there's a lot of history to this town. There's a lot of history to our governance, and understanding, the context of the issues and how what the council's done in the past. And so, I don't know. I mean, I think council, I recognize the fact that we have 3 incumbents running, and that's probably, I don't think that's how it works every time, but I think there's some value in people being willing to stick around for a little while, and because it takes a while to be an effective council member. You don't just walk in there and know what to do. I think it takes time, and so, personally, I found Andy's and others' contributions to be very valuable, and I hope that he continues to do that.
That's true. It takes time. Quinnell's still trying. He'll get there. Nathan, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in light of council not being a volunteer position anymore, which I'm like very thankful for, I think that was a necessary move. At least optically, I think it is probably an issue to not show up to meetings, and you don't necessarily have to accept all of that compensation, whatever it is. I don't really remember what it is, but I'll say one of the things I respect about Giuseppe, I guess, is that like Giuseppe has gone a lot, but he still calls in on teams, and that's an option that I've seen rarely invoked over the last like 4 years when I've been paying attention to this stuff. So everybody theoretically has the option to call in on teams. I've done it myself. I chair a committee at the city, been on that committee for over 2 years. I served on the local government study commission this past year, and like I can count the number of absences on those things on one hand. So, and not necessarily because I've been in town for every meeting, but for most of the ones where I've been out of town, I've been able to call in and still participate. And I think that that's something that should be done a lot more. On that local government study commission, I did think it was probably appropriate to bring a resolution to the larger electorate, to the voters, about term limits. And unfortunately, I was kind of stonewalled in that, so that won't be on the ballot this time around. But it was a conversation, it was a theme repeatedly. You know, our 5-person commission, I guess, decided to make the decision for the voters and not put that to the voters. But so pay attention the next time that comes up, I guess, in 10 years.
So Ben, I noticed you were the only one that didn't raise your hand when she asked who's in favor of term limits. Would you care to explain yourself?
I think I already kind of did, but I mean, look, I just, in what other job in the world is experience a negative thing? I mean, I mean, the thing about local government is it's not just ideas, right? Like we have an organization to run. The city has 150 employees and a $50 million budget, and to even get things accomplished, you have to be able to have the skill set to do it. And that skill set develops over time, and I think the community gets a tremendous value from having effective city council members. And so, while I do think that there should be a duty to maybe not die in the chair, so to speak, I do think there is value in experience, and I think the community gets value from that. So no, that is not something I support. Not here at this level.
Just very quickly, there is an argument to be made in favor of not term limits, which is one of the reasons I love this country. It's the power of democracy. So even when I say you should step down for 1 term after 2, I have a little check in my heart that says, what if the people voted for you? So it's not black and white. Ideally, if the purpose is to get fresh blood into the council, I thought a term limits would have been more effective than money. That was my personal opinion. But I respect the power of democracy. And if people want Andy and Ben, so be it. I mean, they have to have that power.
Yeah. Nathan?
I do think there's a compromise here as well. I think that experience is valuable. And I think that like in the way that Whitefish's government is set up, the mayor wouldn't necessarily need term limits. Mayor Malfeld runs a very efficient meeting, and he could sit in that seat and run those meetings for the rest of his life, in my opinion. So
And he will.
I think there's a compromise to be had there for efficiency and somebody within the government body that has that experience.
Okay, thank you. We have any other questions?
Yeah, question. I think we had a lot of, I don't need a mic. I think I can talk. I think we had a lot of powder days this summer with the traffic situation. And I can't imagine next summer. I just can't imagine it. And I do want to know, where are we going with our traffic? Is there a big plan that's going to be tackled soon?
There is a big plan, actually.
Oh,
yeah. So the interesting thing about traffic is, I mean, look, traffic, especially in July and August, is pretty terrible. I mean, we all know how hard it is to turn left at certain times of the year. The way that the city council looks at traffic, as they should be, it's not a gut feeling, it's kind of a science, right? Like we look at where there's engineers that specialize in this stuff. What kind of levels of traffic flow are we seeing on some of our roads? What are our delays? Where are the problem intersections? They go through, they prioritize what those intersections are, what those roads are, how much it costs to rebuild them. I mean, these infrastructure projects are extremely expensive, and they require study. And so that's what's called our transportation plan. And it gets updated every couple of years. And you see through resort tax projects and otherwise, roads getting updated and expanded, intersections change over time. And I'm sure at one point there was one traffic light, and now there's a couple, and that'll continue to happen. And I think everybody hates traffic, but I think the city needs to adapt to growth, and that's one of those things that we will continue to look at.
I mean, I think I got a couple things to add here. I can't necessarily speak to the plans that are going on, since I'm not necessarily a party to them, other than being a member of the public. But I think that there are a few things to look at here. The first thing being that we have a lot of intersections in Whitefish that are at a substandard level of service, I guess, that have the majority of traffic coming from one or two directions. In my opinion, it doesn't make sense to put a stop sign there. It doesn't make sense to put a stoplight there. Roundabout is much more efficient, and so I will be a roundabout truther. And there's a few of those that would really improve the efficiency and flow of traffic around here on some intersections without needing to do things that are probably unnecessary in a lot of cases, like widening roads and that sort of thing. It also matters how we choose to develop, and we're going through this growth policy update right now, and that's going to come to the council in early January after this new council gets sworn in. So if we don't accept some level of change within the existing city boundaries of Whitefish, then we're doomed to just increase our traffic and widen our roads. More things will get built on the periphery. Those widened roads will fill up with traffic again, and we will be in the same boat. So we have to develop in a way that uses our infrastructure more efficiently, allows people like me who are able-bodied and like to get out and ride a scooter or walk around to do so, and also allows us to develop a public transportation network that can be used by everyone and have the necessary populations around those for it to be successful and not a money loser.
Giuseppe, I have a quick follow-up for you on that. While we're taking shots at counselors that aren't here, we'll take a shot at Sweeney. So Frank and I would have discussions all the time about roundabouts, and back then he wasn't for them. I don't know if he's changed his tune now. But what are your thoughts on what Nathan said about roundabouts? I know personally, I think Baker and 13th, right by the wave, would be a perfect spot for a roundabout, because that four-way stop is a mess. So I'd be curious to get your thoughts on roundabout and if you think they'd be beneficial or not for Whitefish.
As I said before, we're not kings and we're not experts in everything. Thank God we have the people who are expert in traffic. So I can give you an answer as an individual with a gut feeling, but not as a council member. I love roundabouts, and I love them even when I lived in UK, where they go clockwise. So if we can picture that, when I moved to UK, that's the country of the roundabouts, and they go clockwise. So, and the rules of engagement, as long as the culture agrees, will prevent accidents. Now, when I drive the bypass, the Kalispell bypass, I think there is 20% of the culture that doesn't agree with the way I understand roundabouts. And that's where you die by being T-boned, thinking that you're doing the right thing. So I let the traffic experts decide.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
I have a question.
Michelle's got one?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to say all of the pieces right, but I'm going to try, because my question's about the growth policy and the planning that's going on right now and the research. And yep, I knew that was coming. Okay, thank you. My question is about the growth policy and the research and the committees that are working on it right now and gathering all the input from the public. And I've been watching it pretty closely and fairly engaged with it. And it seems that, for lack of a better description, that a lot of the public comment on it is getting overshadowed by individual private group that's not an elected city council or board. And it feels like the city council is putting more weight, if you will, in that particular group versus the public's feedback. And I just kind of wanted to know, you guys are on the council, Nathan, if you were on the council, like how would you balance this group versus public comment.
Michelle,
Thank you.
I jump on this because I wrote an editorial, so I hope you read it. But the title was, Who Writes Our Growth Policies? And I wrote it because I attended a number of community development board meetings, and there was a moment where I felt the last straw had hit the back of the camel, and that's why I wrote that editorial. So I perceived that the way, and we have two members of the planning board, the community development board. One voted a certain way, the other one voted a different way. I reached out to both of them actually, offline. Someone invited me to talk, someone talked to me like 3 months later after the fact. So my point is, I share that sentiment as an individual. As a member of council, again, we need to work as a council, which we have done it. We had actually a comment at the end of the meeting. We had a comment session where we agreed that we need to put some timelines on how the growth policy was going to be delivered, and to be very careful about giving weight to certain areas, because it's very simple. It is. I live near the golf course. I could lobby to make 93 West more beautiful than downtown. So who wins here? The people who are downtown or the people who live near the golf course? And that's as simple as this, what I think it's might be happening, okay? And for that reason, we think we need to go back to what the rules of engagements are, then we're coming down from the state actually, and apply them fairly and openly.
The growth policy is the most important thing happening in the city right now. If you are unfamiliar with what that is and have not participated in it yet, I really, really strongly encourage you to go attend some of these meetings, especially as it relates to the land use policy, which is coming up very soon.
September 16th and 17th.
There we go, September 16th and 17th. Please participate. This growth policy has not made its way to the city council yet. I've been watching it from afar, and we will be reviewing it when it comes forward. I can speak for myself and say that I bristle at the idea of any particular person or organization or money generally having an outsized influence on our government. This government, this municipal government, is here for the citizens, for the community, for all of the citizens that live here. I know for me, I listen to what everybody has to say. I listen to it carefully, and I form my own opinions. But I would absolutely never be favoring any particular organization, and I don't think that's how it's going to go down. So I think that policy is going to come forward to the council, and we will be weighing everybody's feedback, and I trust we'll get to the right answers.
I do think that's that last bit that Ben talked about is kind of at the root of the problem for me. I think that it would be uncomfortable to maybe make that board be a little bit more effective and cohesive and not so antagonistic and seeming to have a preconceived idea, I guess, of the edits that want to be made, and kind of ignoring certain aspects of the public comment and visioning sessions from a year and a half ago. And so I think that while that would be difficult, sometimes in leadership you need to make difficult decisions to make things run better and to make, in this case, I guess, maintain the public's trust through this process that I think is just continually being eroded every month or twice a month or however often those meetings are now, because there's a timeline that needs to be met, even if somebody wants to argue over sentence structure for 2 hours in one of those meetings, that time's got to be made up. And so I would have liked to see the city council do a little bit of work to make that board work together a little bit better when those issues kind of came forward. I get the vibe that, I get the sense that the city council, this all is going to come to the city council. That board's just putting together a draft. The city council is going to maybe fix those things, but I think that the negative impacts on public trust in the process are going to be substantial. But that being said, those last visioning sessions were a really long time ago, so it's very easy for people to say, like, nobody said that in that meeting. But we do have visioning sessions coming up next week on the 16th and 17th at 6 o'clock. Those are identical sessions, so just come to one of those if you can make it, that the city's going to be hosting, and then they're going to be jumping right into the land use. So like, please go to those, share with the consultants that are working on that what your thoughts are, and I think that we will get an honest reflection of what was said in those meetings, and it won't be lost to time as we're putting together that land use element.
Thank you.
First off, I appreciate all three of you, your efforts, and I respect you. That being said, I have lost faith in every level of government. I don't even want to look at the news anymore. I'm one of them. So my question to you is, at a local level, what means things to us, the people who live here in Whitefish? Is one, zoning changes, and two, conditional use permits. So I would like to ask you, and Nathan, I know you're not an incumbent, what was the last conditional use that you voted against? And Nathan, where do you draw the line for conditional use permits that, if a business comes to you and says, I'm going to go out of business unless I get this new change, does that automatically mean that you're going to vote for this conditional use? I look at this alcohol in a retail establishment that is unprecedented, and now are we all going to be subject to going to our local business and having them serving liquor there? Where do you draw the line between existing residents who want an environment to raise their families in and businesses that want to make money? Thank you.
Okay, I'll start. Okay, sure. It's tough. I mean, the city council does, we call these development approvals, right? They're proposed projects that come forward, and a conditional use, it's important to understand the context of what a conditional use permit is, because a conditional use permit is a presumptively allowed activity where we're generally evaluating the whether conditions should be placed on the business to mitigate impacts to people or businesses around it. It is pretty rare that the city council does turn down conditional use permits. It's not unheard of. It happens, and I'll put PUDs in that category. I mean, there's the Mountain Gateway. There was a hotel. There was a church in downtown. Maybe you remember that one. It happens from time to time, but no, it's not a common event. And the reason why is because we set up the rules such that if a project really makes no sense, it never makes it there to begin with, right? Like if there's a gravel pit that somebody wants to put on West 2nd Street, it's not even allowed to come forward with a conditional use permit. So it doesn't, by the time it gets to that point, you would actually be surprised how limited the council's ability is to legally turn those down. But there can be certain types of businesses or proposals where that has to happen. But no, it is not common. And we had one recently with Kimosabe that was a retail store with a bar, and it's in downtown where there's retail stores and bars. So I don't think that means the world's going to end and every place is going to have a bar. Yeah, I mean, it's just how the system works. And to be honest, I do think where the state legislature is going, I think you will probably see a lot less conditional use permits, generally speaking, going forward, and less discretionary approvals happening at the city level. So.
Ryan, you want me to add?
Yeah, go ahead if you want.
The question was, when was your last time you voted against, or which one you voted? I clearly remember, because I was not supposed to be part of it, but the public hearing lasted so long that I got sworn in, making the motion to deny the PUD of the Mountain Gateway. And And that was an important decision. We voted as a council. I remember Councilman Cunell was adamant about approving it. That's an example. I also remember a situation where there was a project that is the project across the street from Town Pump. Can you picture that project? It looks like a parking lot with a yellow sign on it. Nothing is happening there. Okay, that's a case where I personally believe we were putting too many conditions, and I was against all those conditions. And eventually I would have been the one in favor to let them develop, but that, what I call it over-conditioning, maybe will mean that we won't have a development there, and maybe we won't have dwellings there. So that's why I don't want to deal with conditional use permits or PUDs, because those are rulings that judges make and not legislators. When I ran, I thought I was going to be a legislator, not a judge. And now finally, the rules are coming down where we be less and less of judges, because judges can be inconsistent. They can approve an hotel today, and 3 years later, same situation, different council people might deny the same. So it's hard to guarantee consistency when you rule as a judge. And that's why in the court of law, there is this thing called jurisprudence. And when we do a CUP, we're actually doing legislative work, because someone else can come later and call that precedent to get another CUP. Going back to the question, yes, I have denied CUPs, but I also approved not putting too many conditions.
Try to keep this as short and simple as I can, but I generally don't support government entity, local government entity, or any government entity really picking winners or losers in business. And so I think a good example of this is like when marijuana was legalized and all these dispensaries started opening up. I think it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction of the city council to say like, oh, we have to limit these things. Ed can probably attest to this, but the marijuana business is a pretty hard business. I think give it 2 or 3 years, that's going to sort itself out. A lot of those are not going to be around anymore. And I don't necessarily think it's the government's job to pick winners or losers in business. I think that, like, you know, not having a Walmart in Whitefish is a good thing, so that might be like where my line is there in terms of like those types of businesses. But generally, I think that competition helps all of us as consumers as a general rule. So that's kind of how I look at that way. When it comes to housing, my line, I guess, is large subdivisions through annexation, whether those are on small lots or big lots where the city is extending services, because quite frankly, the property taxes don't cover those extension of services and the maintenance that's required on it. And so that type of growth necessitates more growth of that type to continue to like maintain the Ponzi scheme of paying off the maintenance liabilities that the city is gaining over time. And so that is one reason, in addition to the affordability aspect, why I think that we should focus on like infill development, higher densities in town where our existing infrastructure is, where we're not needing to extend things out and just growing the footprint of the city and the city's liabilities.
Thank you. I think Bonnie had a question.
I have a question.
Okay, come on up.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Brian. Thank you. Okay, because of where we are at this point in time, I think it would be wasteful for me to direct this question to Ben and G-Man, because you are being sued at the moment. So I'll just direct this question to Nathan, but feel free if you want to chime in. So Nathan, just a little bit of background, louder for the people in the back. The city of Whitefish, which of course your council represents, the police chief and Officer Michael Hingis of the Whitefish Police Department are currently being sued by Becerra Rengifo del Castillo for the stop that was made back in April for a broken taillight, which then resulted in a phone call to Customs and Border Patrol, which then resulted in Becerra being unlawfully detained in Washington State, losing 2 weeks of his life, and then dumped on the street, and then had to find his way back, but thankfully he did. Anyway, so that's background for people, and if you lose the lawsuit, then I assume as a taxpayer, somehow you have to come up with the funds for that, or whatever that works. I just wanted to ask you, Nathan, to put yourself in the seat city council seat back in April, early May, when you had members of the public, including myself, come and say simply, what about an apology? Why don't you apologize to Becaire for this? And this is before the audio was released, okay? We just knew, just by the basic facts, it was unjust. Before the audio was released, which you have Officer Hingis on record, anybody can find that, don't take my word for it, calling Border Patrol, saying I pulled somebody over for a broken taillight, he only speaks Spanish, I think you might want to come and check it out. Well, if that's not racial profiling, racism, I don't know what is. So there you are, you're sitting on council, you have members of the public come and ask you to, speak out as an individual or as a member of council and just acknowledge that this is wrong. Maybe the police department needs to review something. Speak up and say, this isn't okay. How would you have handled it if we would have come and you were sitting up there, and rather than the reaction we got, which was the city closing ranks and supporting the police department? So thank you for that, appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. These two can't comment on it, so I'll try my best. But yeah, I mean, I think I was at those meetings, or I was at least watching them on YouTube, and the general sense that I got from the counselors that were addressing it at the meeting was some level of defensiveness, feeling like they were maybe being attacked personally because the city was being questioned for this, as well as a level of dismissiveness, in my opinion, as well. Kind of just dismissing the complaints and maybe hoping that it would all go away. That is my personal opinion of how I read the room. I'm sure that there were conversations that were going on that we weren't privy to, and they were, working on things behind the scenes. But I think that it would have been very helpful to acknowledge the concerns more forcefully, and like I said earlier in my opening statement, to address, to ask the right questions, I guess, rather than just asking the surface level policy of do we have or the surface level question of do we have a policy in place that aims to prevent bias-based policing, or do we have a policy in place about how we interact with CBP? Ultimately, that's a yes or no question that doesn't gain any information. And I read the complaint before earlier today, and the complaint alleges that there were a couple of policies. One of them, the officer kind of remaining there after he had written out the warning for 6 minutes or something like that, waiting for the Border Patrol officer to arrive, which may have been in violation of the policy. I don't know if that policy that was alleged in the complaint was in place at the time or maybe later, but things like that. That would have been an easy answer to get to, just asking what the specifics of the policy were, and then people, I think in the public, would have felt like it was actually being addressed instead of ultimately being dismissed, and kind of just hoping it would go away and that people wouldn't keep coming and talking for hours at the beginning of a meeting. So I think that ultimately it's just about asking those deeper questions to try to get to the root of what the issue is, or try to get to the root of the concern that the public has. And I don't think that was done in that case, unfortunately. And I think that is one, why certain members of the public feel the way they do about that process, but may have even contributed to certain aspects of the lawsuit, which of course is just speculation on my part. I don't know if anything would be different if things were addressed differently, but I think that I've watched a lot of city council meetings, and it's very rare for people to come up and make comments on things that aren't on the agenda for an hour and a half. And so that in and of itself is a sign that something needs to be addressed more than just asking yes or no questions about whether policies are in place.
Thanks, Nathan. I think Ed has a question here before we move into closing comments.
I do. In your opinion, is the deep state, no, I'm just kidding. You guys, I've brought this up before, and I've been here over 25 years, and I've always lived within 2 miles of city limits and have had as many as 7 LLCs. And I've employed many people, and a big part of this town, this community. I've never been able to vote or run for election. And I'd like to get you guys on record, all three of you, real quick, and I understand the corporation argument. I've heard it before. I'd say just tell a corporation they can't do it, unless they live here, I guess. But it seems there's a way to do it. But wouldn't it be fair or possible for somebody like me to be able to be, active in local politics? I mean, I'm as active as I want. You guys got it. This is what you get. If you let me vote, I wouldn't do any of this stuff. Just swear to God. but really, in your opinion, real quick, yes or no, and why? Because I'd like to be able to vote, and do you see that changing? Would that ever be a possibility?
Well, I would invite you to run for county commissioner to begin.
I don't want that job. Man, ask Brad how bad it is.
So you can be involved in local politics. Now, a friend of mine once told me the law is not fair. Now you are active, so are we, in voting our representatives. Okay? The book says that there are rules for which you can vote within Whitefish. I lived here for 16 years, and I couldn't vote because I didn't check one of the boxes, which was American citizenship. So I probably had more right than you to vote because I lived here. I paid property taxes.
Okay, that's not right.
As a private individual, right? Now don't profile me.
Okay, well, I'm not calling ICE. Don't worry about it.
But here's the answer. I mean, you want to change the rules? Let's work to change the rules.
So, yes or no? Should I be able to vote?
No.
All right, goddammit. All right. If we change the rules, of course. Ben?
Well, you have to start paying city property taxes. How about we start there?
Well, I do. Right here. And 3 other properties.
No, it sounds like an interesting idea, but I do think those rules get made elsewhere. But look, I know government can be boring sometimes, especially local government, but I think it's really important to participate, and I appreciate the fact that you and other people, whether you're in the city or not in the city, participate in our local government. And so, I don't know how that happens, Ed. I don't think it's here in the city council, but I'll support you if you like, if you come up with a proposal. But I think please still participate, and I hope everybody here does come down to council meetings. You'd be amazed how many of those are empty and stuff. And there's some important things that happen down there. So.
I mean, in the last few years, the donut has really grown, and these people use all of our services, and obviously the city will expand at some point, and annexation happens and stuff. And it might happen to me someday. I mean, I lived on Big Mountain Road for 23 years. Every year they're like, oh yeah, it's coming. It's coming. Sewer's coming. Annexation, still not happening. But Nathan, what do you think about that?
No. Sorry.
Okay.
I mean,
wings are going up.
I'll just throw like a counterfactual out there. You don't live. I guess so. Yeah, you don't live in the city, but you and a bunch of other people that are in this situation, like voting. I don't know. Have some ulterior motive and want to triple everybody's property taxes. If there were enough people in your situation, that could happen.
True
I think
that.
we also see something similar at the county level, where to run for a commission seat, you need to live within the district that's being elected. Yet those seats are voted at large in the county, which really
It's weird.
Gives us representation that we probably wouldn't. It doesn't give us the representation we would have in the Whitefish area if the voting maybe only took place within those districts.
And if you voted, Safeway would vote. Marriott Hotels would vote.
You can tell the difference between me and Safeway, I think.
Exactly.
Safeway drives a
We're all
Jaguar. I
equal,
drive the
but you're more
Chevy.
equal.
What is the name of your LLC
Which one?
for here?
Live to Ski.
No, I was talking about the Death Star one. We
Oh, that's
we
the
don't want
property.
that one voting.
I love that one. What, are you kidding me? All right, you guys. Well, let's give you some closing statements here. We'll start with Nathan and go right to left this time, and just keep it to a minute or two. Thanks, you guys.
Yeah, I think I've said a lot, so I won't repeat myself. But I'm asking for your vote in November because I think it's time to one, for some new ideas up on the council, and I'm somebody that's not afraid to make ideas or just be in isolation by myself on a vote for something that I believe is right. You can ask Scott about that one. We almost threw down the other day in a meeting. So, but I stand by my principles of what I think is right, which is trying to make this place a better place for younger people to establish a life, that's a place that's more affordable generally for the vast majority of people that live here, and a place that I guess actually lives out the values that we purport to care about inside City Hall. So I promise to stand by those values and my values, and I hate confrontation, but I will be confrontational if I believe in something. So asking for your vote in November to put me up there to do that.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being here and participating in your local government. I want to thank Ed for hosting and the Whitefish Dems for hosting. Listen, I moved here 13 years ago, and when I did, I lived in an apartment on Central Avenue for $600 a month, and I met some of the most incredible friends and people that I've ever met. And when I first moved here, I did it because, I mean, look, we've got great amenities. We've got a ski hill. We've got a lake. That's not the reason why I live here. I live here because of the people that are here that I've gotten to know over the years has a very strong community. And if there's any one thing that I really care about, and the reason why I do this, it's because I believe that it is my job, it is our job, it is the city council's job to help support that community and make sure that it continues to thrive and that people continue to experience the wonderful place that Whitefish can be to live. So I go in every meeting, every speech, everything that I do, thinking about, what do you want? What does the typical citizen in this town need from our local government, and what does it not need? And I think I've got some professional experience that has proved to be helpful. I think I've finally gotten to the point where I can offer some leadership with our city, and I'm here asking for your vote for a second term to continue that, and I will continue to work for you and for our community. So I just want to thank you for being here, and I will thank you for your support, and I hope to see you around town.
First of all, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Ryan and Kevin. Again, thank you for not running again. That's real. First of all, I would ask you to kindly go and check a website. It's called G-Man for Whitefish. G-M-A-N 4 F-O-R. You can even put the number 4. Whitefish.com. And there is the records, 4 years of voting records, and the goals and the results, and the full platform. I believe that this service is representation, and it's called representative actually, and it means representing the ones who voted for you and the ones who didn't. I made a mistake once. I told Nathan, since you didn't vote for me, I won't bring your ideas to council. And I still feel bad for even saying that, because I remember, because one of the things I instituted from the moment I was sworn in was Monday opening office hours. Every Monday, I ask for an appointment, because if nobody shows up, I don't want to sit there for 4 hours waiting. But every Monday, I've been open to the public to come and meet me with any concerns. I've met people from Whitefish, I've met people from Texas who come here 3 months a year, and I meet them at the break room at city chambers between 2 and 5 p.m. Sometimes next door we have the Whitefish Convention Visitor Bureau board meeting going on. It's interesting to split myself between those 2 meetings because it's interesting what's going on there too. So, representing, receiving communications from my citizens, and managing their quality of life and money, because I feel a huge responsibility that even if only 1/3 of your tax bill is money that comes into the city, because there is county, there is fire, there is school, that money means a lot to be managed to me. I manage it even more strictly than if it were my own money. I can waste my own money, but I couldn't think of wasting some money that is not mine. So if you look at some of my voting record, then I ask you to vote for my voting record. And if that doesn't match what you expect from a city councilor, don't vote for me. Check my voting record, check my goals, and if that makes you say, well, I like that he voted to increase the parking ratio, to decrease the parking ratios, because we don't need 2.5 parking spots in affordable housing. We can deal with 1.5 and build more houses. If you like that, vote for me. If you don't like that, don't vote for me. If you like the fact that I said we should rebate more of the resort tax back to the residents and less to the property owners who are not residents here, the state obliges us to rebate 5%, so be it, but not 25 or 36 or 45% to everybody. And someone asked me, what would you do with the rest of the money? Cut checks and send them to the residents who rent. So I pushed that idea. So if you like those records, vote for me. If obviously you have to be able to vote, right? So Ed, I'm sorry, you cannot. I wish you could. So check my voting record, and you can find it on the website, and reach out to me. I'm very Michelle, you reach out to me. I didn't hide myself. I just replied to you. So that's why I'm asking you to vote, not necessarily for me, but for someone who represents you by his voting record. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you all very much for doing this. Before we officially wrap up, Councilwoman Rebecca Norton couldn't be here tonight, but she is here. Hey, Rebecca. Well, she did ask.
Ryan, I've been staring at her for approval the whole evening. And she hasn't noted. She never nods to me.
Well, she did ask I read a brief 700-page statement of hers, but since she's here, she could do that on her own. But they're going to stick around. If you have any more questions, feel free to talk to them. But thank you guys very much for your time. Appreciate it.